let's get going.
Nice meeting.
Yeah.
Let's see. Since Beth was scheduled for 7 and it's 7:03, let's get going with Beth, Town Clerk. Lou, did you want to introduce Beth? Since Mike's not here?
Beth, welcome. Do you know everyone at the table
I
tonight?
think I do.
Do you want to do introductions just to make sure?
No, that's all right. I think I know everybody.
Okay.
John.
Beth, if I could interrupt, we are being recorded,
Oh, okay.
video recording.
Thank you.
And guys, if there's somebody who comes in, can you let me know?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Beth and I spoke today. It's a very typical town clerk budget. Fluctuates with the elections, and since there are 3 elections this year, there's a request for additional monies. There's the elections, local elections in May, primaries in September, then the state elections in November. So, that's the biggest change. Everything else is within guidelines. There's a request for $27.50 that, I'll let Beth speak more about directly if she'd like. Let me get organized here. So, that's for the elections themselves. Everything else is within guidelines, and they're all related to elections. There's going to be a capital request for software related to the public records request.
I don't believe it's
That's not
capital.
not for the capital?
It's not within.
Right, okay. Then there's going to be a request for that. I do not have the sheet for that in front of me. I picked this up from Mike today, basically. So, apologize for not being as prepared as I could be.
Well, Beth can talk about the details.
Well, where do you want me to start?
Well, does anybody have questions about the elections aspect of it? No? Didn't think so. It's the usual.
It's the usual. Things are a little bit different. We will be having the 3 elections this year, the local, followed by the primary in September, and the state election in November. The state election will have early voting, similar to the presidential in 2016, which was new then, so we're still getting used to that. I believe that I've budgeted enough for it. It's going to require extra manpower in the office during office hours, and then extra manpower the day of the election to process the ballots at the polling place.
What's the pre-election manpower demand? Is that a number of days? So you said extra manpower?
Yeah, well, early voting is for the 2 weeks leading up to the election.
I understand what it is, but you have an extra person there regularly?
The last time we ran it, we didn't really have any extra personnel during the day. We were open, we just ran it during regular office hours. I ended up putting, it was me and the assistant chair at the time, I ended up putting in some extra hours in order to process things, slightly longer days here and there, in order to take care of whatever the particular demand was that we had. We had a little bit of help from our, we're gonna be relying on that a lot, again this time, but help from our senior work-off person to organize and alphabetize and help check people in and make sure that the booths are staffed or have supplies and pens and things like that. So we'll rely mostly on that. So
it's different from a mail-in ballot. They actually come in, fill out a ballot, put it in an envelope, and
right.
you know.
So basically, what happens is during that time, the town clerk's office gets nothing done except for managing the early voters,
Yep.
which is what happened the last time.
And that goes on for how long?
For the November election, it's going on for 2 weeks prior.
2 weeks.
Yeah. And the state has just come out with, after, of course, budgets were done, they're this close to authorizing early voting for the primary for just 5 days, which you know, that's, there's no way to really budget for that. We don't know how many, you know, the primaries are small anyway, I don't know how many people are going to be, finding imperative to come in to early vote for a primary. They don't come in and vote in person. So it's hard to gauge for that, you know. Early voting is really brand new. It's an unfunded mandate that the state handed down to us. We're still struggling with it, trying to figure out how to make it work. People liked it. That's the only thing we know, of course. The residents did like it. And so we're just struggling to keep it within the, you know, to staff and keep it within the budget.
All right. So there's that piece of it, and then there's the other piece that Lou mentioned, records tracking software
Right.
and dealing with records requests.
Right. That has become the biggest part of the job. This is another unfunded mandate by the state. Started, you know, there were always public records and public records requests, and there was always a law, but it really changed last January, and so there's, we didn't know how it was gonna work out and shake out in a little town like in Topsfield or any towns. Nobody really knew what the building would be. I'm finding that I'm spending, I would say, 40% of my time doing public records. Sometimes it's today, my day was probably more like 75% of the day was spent doing public records. And I was on my own today, my assistant wasn't in, so I was trying to juggle people coming in for papers, dog licenses, census, birth certificate. I think I had a birth certificate today, I had someone with a death certificate. So trying to juggle that and still, you know, the regular work of the office and manage the public records requests.
How much of those public records requests require outside counsel review, and what are the costs attributed to that?
I don't have that information, I don't talk to counsel. I can tell you that I do go to the Secretary of State's office often, and their response is always talk to town council.
But that's more in Kelly's
Yeah,
budget.
I refer things a lot of times to Kelly, we're
Yeah, I
very
wasn't sure if it was
collaborative, we
getting-
work
It's
together.
getting attributed somehow to the work that she's doing. She's spending 40% of the time doing it.
I think there's a connection.
And 40% is conservative, I really feel. It averages up and down. Last year, we had 117 public records requests. This year, we're, 5 weeks into the year, almost 6 weeks into the year? And so last year, in the first 6 weeks, I had, I think, 10 or 11. This year, we've had like 21. And I'm still honestly wading through my inbox. I was at a conference last week for a day and a half, and I'm still weeding through my inbox, trying to catch up.
So I'm not clear, when you say public records, are these the routine types of requests, like birth certificates? Or are
Nope.
you getting extraordinary ones where people are actually looking for documents from meetings and that
Right.
kind of thing?
Minutes
That's what's
from
driving the demand
meetings,
this year.
Financial budgeting information. I have some voter list ones that come in, you know, there are people that are looking for voter lists, there are people, what did I have last week? Oh, the building,
There's a recording.
inspectional services, how many building permits we issued in a certain amount of time, that
Do you-
kind of thing.
Do you
But
notice?
a lot of minutes, a lot of budget information.
So do you have a sense, and I wouldn't be surprised if you said no, but do you have a sense of whether this is a new trend, a new way things are going to be going forward? Is it similar to what other towns are experiencing, or is that something we just don't know at this point?
I think that it has been more than most towns were expecting. I think a lot of towns are struggling with it. I think that when I ask around, I think we have more requests than most towns our size. It's sometimes double what most other people are getting. Actually, I spoke to the town clerk in Winfield, and she had, which is a much bigger town, has very few. So it depends on the town. And, you know, this year, you know, we're already at 21. Last year, the same time, I mean, I don't have any way to gauge it, you know, I
Does
don't
it
know.
die off post-town meeting, like come town meeting, does it settle off, or is it steady throughout the year?
It's been fairly steady. It's been fairly steady. There were some lulls, a few. I think I maybe went a week without having to really be on top of it. It's very time consuming managing this schedule. It's cumbersome right now because we don't have any way to, the way we're tracking it is most of them come in by email. And then I log them on a very cumbersome spreadsheet on Excel, and then set up files for them, send out the request to the proper custodians, determine who the proper custodian is, send out the request, and set up a file on my computer for information coming in, because I get things piecemeal. So that takes some time to coordinate all of that. When things come in, I'm constantly monitoring. I live with this little spreadsheet at the bottom of my little screen, just every day, checking it all day long, seeing where we are with things, reaching out to custodians, talking with the state when we get appealed, which happens a lot.
Were you able to consistently meet the 10-day time frame?
It's a struggle sometimes, but yeah, I mean, it's you know, it takes a lot of coordination and keeping in touch with people. You know, checking in with custodians, Karen and I, you know.
Some of whom don't necessarily read their email every day.
Yeah, I've spoken with Karen a lot. Who else have I spoken to? Well, Kelly and I.
Yeah, we have a daily check-in.
Yes, Kelly and I check in every day on things and talk about where we're at.
So this is leading up to the software request?
Right, yeah. The software request would give us a way to put everything in one place. When the emails come in, they can be immediately put into the system. It's a cloud-based system. It'll be assigned a number. The email will go right out to people, the proper custodians, and when the custodians have something to upload as a response, it will go right into the system immediately. There are pre-canned messages that it can send out. We can set up messages so that it can get back to the requesters so that they know, you know, that we've received their request and things like that. It will help streamline all of those things. Everything will be in one place. The other thing that I really like about it is that once a request is fulfilled and it's sent out to the requester, it's linked on our website, the town website, to the cloud where it resides, and anyone that's looking for information can see all the public records requests. They can go in and search the information. Requesters can go online and see where their request is.
And hopefully reduce future requests because.
Right, if
redundant
people see,
requests.
exactly, people will see the information that's already been requested, exactly.
So it sounds like there's not a lot of option here, is we need to meet that timeframe. We need
I have
to
a
respond to
little
requests.
brochure about it.
And we either put more manpower in place as it grows, or
Right,
we put
you
a
know,
system in place.
I'm spending a lot of my time doing it, and I haven't really, because it's so, you know, the timelines and the deadlines are so important, I spend a lot of time managing it myself. I have not brought my assistant into it at all, so she's taking up the slack, doing, you know, as much of the town clerk stuff that she can do when I have her, only 19 hours, so it's, you know, it's just been too important. I haven't, you know, she's only there part-time, so I can't give her any of it because I'm afraid that we'll miss a deadline.
And just something that, so everyone understands, it's a $2,500 purchase price and a $2,000 annual fee.
Should have been in person.
Which might be a good segue into your next item.
Or missing a deadline and defending a single incident of that.
Right.
That's kind of a simple, to me, that's a simple question with a simple answer. But because this is not, you know, we talked a little bit about whether we're getting more demand than others, but it's not a singular issue for sure. All the municipalities are going through it, all the
Right.
corporations are going through it.
Right.
I can tell you, my corporation is spending millions of dollars on records, not on responding to requests, but in having a records retention management system, that if we ever did get one, we're able to find it, and we're not gonna have 37 duplicates. You know, and I don't know if you're even looking at emails, redundant emails, and how does somebody, if somebody asks a question about emails about something, how do you pull all those together? I don't even know if this does that or not.
Yeah, well, I can't imagine trying to do it with what we currently have. We don't even have any IT support, so I don't even know how, you know, managing a request like that would be interesting.
So beyond that, software is the first line of defense. But then also in your beyond guidelines, you wanted more hours,
Yes,
basically a second assistant, so we're not triggering benefits.
right,
Right, so
that was
this,
the idea.
so is this obviously because of the small dollar amount, doesn't
Right.
trigger procurement or anything like that? Did we look at any other systems?
No, we currently use, I haven't looked at too many yet.
That's one of the most cost-effective ones that are out there that would do the job that she's heard from other town clerks.
The other
It's
benefit
very
is
helpful.
we already use this company for our dog system.
Oh, okay.
So you're looking to add
Right,
hours.
right. Originally, that assistant position was 25 or 27 hours. It got slashed back in 2010, although none of the work went away. It's been 19 hours since, but the office has changed a lot. Public records being one of the things. Early voting, that's something that's a big change that comes and goes. But we're looking at more unfunded mandates coming down the pike, they're talking about automatic registration or day of election registration for voters, and that's gonna trigger a lot of different things in the office too. I'm not sure how that will shake out yet because there were no details on it, but that was a big topic at the conference that I was at last week, is automatic enrollment for voter registration. And that's gonna require us to do a lot of follow-up to make sure people are qualified. We're gonna have to contact people several times, so I would imagine there'll be, maybe more postage coming up down the line when something like this comes in. I mean, the office is changing every day. It's changing with the public record stuff, these are just some of the examples. So when it was slashed back in 2010, it was a very different office from what it is now. Topsfield is getting bigger, we have more residents, the public records thing is taking up so much of my time. Even with the software, it will still require a lot of it will still require my time to just, make sure everything's on track. Yes, it'll give me, email alerts and beepers and things will be more automatic, but, there's just
What does your 40 hours go down to with the software? 20? You cut it in half?
I honestly don't know. I don't know how to.
I would say the difference maybe is if you think it's not gonna replace a person or manpower. What I think the software will do is allow the town clerk to be more efficient and more effective with the way that she's able to track and monitor. So rather than using an Excel
It's the time
spreadsheet,
that it takes to read
Right.
the email, decide what it is, figure out who it goes to.
And then categorize
And then follow it back up, and then understanding which ones are done, which ones aren't on the timeline. So it's more of a workflow
Right.
that other people
exactly.
can interact with it, so
Yes, other
it's
people.
some time, but then the software's not gonna go fulfill the request.
No, it's not, and I'm still going to have to reach out to people that aren't getting back to me in a timely fashion, even though they're getting email bings, like I will be getting email bings. There are still will be times that I'm gonna need to do that.
It maybe changes the stress level.
It will, yes, it will, the biggest thing it will do is change my stress level.
It's gonna reduce the risk of failure.
Right.
So
Exactly.
something could get dropped or
Right.
misfiled, or something could happen today, and no matter how hard you work at it, how you try to do it,
Right.
software will tell you every day, you gotta do this, you gotta do this. Right? Yep. Makes
Right,
sense.
yeah, the stress of managing it is, it's very substantial.
If I may, through the chair, I just wanted to add one more dimension to this that the town clerk hasn't mentioned, is the larger, the greater complexity of the requests. The majority of the requests are, can I get a copy of the meeting minutes from last Wednesday's FinCom meeting? It's, can I have all the information from the FY17 budget and the FY18 projected budget, and from the FY18 information that was submitted to the gateway system, so that I can tell if the town is on track with its budget requests.
Any and all documents, blah, 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 you know.
Right, and so it's mandatory that we would respond with a list of potentially responsive documents that may include not just the town clerk in the minutes, it may include the town accountant in her records, or me in my files, and
Can I ask
me
a
in the
question?
legal.
For the more cumbersome document requests, like, so if you have 117 requests from a year,
Mhm.
how many people make the 117 requests? And how many people are making the ones that are taking most of the time? Is it like, are they all, is that evenly distributed?
No. I would say the more complicated ones come from one or two people. The more time-consuming ones with the any and all documentation, messages.
50% of all of them come from one resident. That's a fact. Not that there's anything, I mean, the law allows that, there's no issue with that. We're suggesting that we have the statistics to show that 50% of these requests are coming from one resident.
And that's bearing out this year, again as well, in the 21 that I have so far this year.
Well, the law is, you've got to respond to the
Right.
requests.
Exactly.
It is what it is.
It is what it is.
Regardless of
And the
who's
state
asking.
has the law, and we have to follow it.
The law also is that the requester should pay for your time and copies of a certain amount, so if it gets abusive, then you can at least make them pay, and maybe it'll be a disincentive to make some of the requests.
In a perfect world.
Yep,
But still, you have to respond.
right,
I mean, you have to
Right.
track it,
right.
even if there's a dollar amount attached that,
And it's not just,
Yes.
you know, dealing with the custodians of the records, it's also dealing with the secretary's office and the superintendent of records, practically on a first name basis. I mean, I'm not the only clerk, but there are several clerks who are extremely frustrated with it and didn't realize we'd have to get law degrees in order to do the clerk's job. I mean, that's what it's turning into with the public records stuff. A lot of clerks feel that way.
must make for interesting association of town clerk meetings.
It does, but at least, I know that, you know, there are others out there that are struggling. I don't think that many struggle as much as we do with the volume of requests, but.
The bottom line is we need to comply with the law, we
There's a
need to be
requirement.
comfortable that we're doing
Yes.
it.
There's a
It shouldn't be a
recording.
situation you're stressed out and worried about it. We
Right.
should give you the support, whether it's more staff or systems
Right.
or both.
Both.
As long as we have the challenge, I think we should meet it and address it. And it's not, what we're talking about right now, at least with the system, it's not a lot of money. We start adding staff and personnel, it gets to be a bit more, but we need to do what we need to do.
The office is changing too, you know, I mean,
Madam Chairman, can I ask a question too? I know there's a citizens petition to do a town meeting in a secret ballot type of, and this would be, if it passes this year, it would be for town meeting in 2019. Have you researched any of the cost of doing that?
not yet, no.
That may be something that you want to look at.
Yeah, there are options out there.
Well, there are expensive options out
Right.
there too, because I know some of the towns have gone that way, but they've gone with an electronic ballot, which is
Right.
very expensive.
Right, and some people have they've had the luxury of budget to be able to do that, put those
Exactly, that's
things
what I
into
am.
place without, the other use of being able to use them in elections. They have not been approved by the secretary for
Right.
use in elections, which
Right.
would make the investment make more
Right.
sense. But some towns are doing that, they call them, they're clickers that, kids use in colleges today, for voting.
I would suggest that you probably need to do that in anticipation of the citizens petition.
Thank you. We didn't know about the citizens petition yet.
Yeah.
We haven't got to the warrant.
That would definitely be on the budget next year. if
Well,
that
it would be
goes-
too late
Well,
for next
you
year.
need it for May
Yeah, well,
2019, so it would need to be an ad.
Well, it'll be on the next round, for sure.
Yeah. All right. You guys got more questions for Beth?
No, that was great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Paula, we kept you later.
Okay. Hopefully we can have some fun.
So, Paula, thanks for coming in.
Oh, Beth,
Wait,
no.
Beth.
Oh, okay. Bye,
Oh,
Beth.
Thank you, Beth, I'm sorry.
Okay, now Dana's going to introduce Paula.
Thank you, Lou, by the way.
Good night.
Good job.
Good night.
I think everybody knows Paula Berg from last year, she was in here. Was last year your first year or second year?
First year I was in here,
Okay,
so I started July 2016.
yeah, and you did a great presentation last year, and we got to meet a few times. Unfortunately, we've been communicating by email this year, but one of the reasons for that is you don't have such big asks this year. I think $450 or something you had in there.
It's more of a correction.
Yeah, so I mean, you can share that with us, but if you could maybe give us a quick update as to what you've done with the millions of dollars we gave you last year. I exaggerate. I think we did provide some funding though to meet a couple of requests from last year, and just give us an update on how the council is operating and what we look forward going forward.
Love to do that. Thank you for having me. I know you've got a lot of much kind of more serious considerations to take under your wing. But let me start by responding to the money that you did support last year. So first of all, an additional 5 hours for my position. So that has actually allowed me, I was kind of working it anyway, but to go even above and beyond, and we're adding a lot of different things, which I'll go through as I kind of just go through a quick summary of what's been happening. But I do want to specifically address the monies that you were supported last year and then were ultimately funded by the town. So to speak to software, since that just came up, I can tell you that the software that we have is working really well. We won't fully realize its potential until we're in our new home next door, because at that point, we'll set up a workstation where people will come in. It'll be funded, manned by volunteers, it's not a position, but there'll be a check-in. So just like if you maybe go to your dentist or your gym or something and you swipe in, and then you can say, today I'm going to coffee and conversation and Tai Chi, and that all gets tracked. So all of that's being done by hand now. For the events kind of activities portion, the transportation, we've completely converted over to using the scanners that we have. So we're off to a really good start with that, and it really helps us in terms of tracking our numbers that do matter, just because people are interested, but very importantly because grant requests are attached to numbers like that. So our software investment has been a good one, and as I said, we'll fully realize the potential when we get set up into the new wing.
Have you seen any change in grant success at this point, or is it too early?
So we actually, probably more attached to my additional hours than that specific request, but I'm sure that's coming down the pipe, and we can only handle so much at a time. So let me jump to the programming space, which I know was a special town meeting article, so that's a little bit different than the other two requests I made. And we've been very comfortable at Trinity. They couldn't be more gracious in terms of allowing us to park even when we aren't technically within our hours. Like when we took the insider's tour of West Point, people left cars overnight, and there's no problem with that. We've had things, Saturday mornings, we've had our memory cafe, which I'll talk about briefly, and they've, allowed parking, and there's been some separate funding for that, not from the town, but they've just been wonderful. I can't say enough good things about this, the hosts that Trinity has been. And, Emerson was the same, it's just the space at Trinity really aligns well with what we'll have in the future. So it made sense programmatically, because that way we didn't have to postpone, like, for example, our fitness classes, Emerson, space at Emerson wasn't really conducive to that, but at Trinity, it is. And so it's been great, because we haven't had to stall any programming, because we're there and not, in our final destination. So that's been wonderful, and in anticipation of the opening, which seems to be on target for November of 2018, what I would recommend is putting on the special town meeting, again, an article to request the rental fee, which is the $600 a month, for the first 6 months of the fiscal year. That gives us a little buffer in case things don't happen quite as quickly as we hope in November. And then we'll be assured that we can just do our regular programming right through the end of the calendar year. So that's a recommendation, but that, I know it's a little bit separate from what we're talking about tonight, because that's a separate type of appropriation. Does anyone have any questions on any of that? Those are basically the 3 areas for funding cameras.
Any changes in membership?
So
Your
new
membership's
members?
been growing, yeah.
Oh, absolutely, yes. So let me just quickly go through, this is the fun part, what's been happening. I've thrown a few of these out. They were hard to find. I had a bunch in the office the other day, but they're mostly gone. But I grabbed the last couple so that you could get a sense for what's going on. It's really an exciting time. We've kind of got our baseline programming, which again, when we get to our new space, we're gonna just pick it up and transfer it right over. Everything we've been doing, we've been keeping in mind, what do we have in the future? Because we don't want to build something and then have to pull it back or, whatever. So you kind of can see what the baseline is on, on Monday we do this, on Tuesday we do this, on Wednesday we do that. We try to program out 2 months, and so people can really plan their schedules. Some people will never turn it over until like March 1st, but that's okay. It's there for those who like to plan. And we've had tremendous attendance at so many of our things. I've got some specific numbers I'll just share at the end, just to give you an idea. But, we just had 13 people go up to Sea Glass for lunch last Tuesday, which was a really nice little outing. And, all of these are pay-as-you-go, people are paying on their own. This is the only thing the town's contributing to is the bus driver, but we also have a grant from Senior Care that helps offset that as well. So for very low cost, we're offering a lot of programs, which you can actually just see for yourself in here. This is half of what we do. I really want to stress that because I talk about it a lot because it's kind of fun and so many people are involved. But half of our time is really devoted to making sure people get the services they need. Families call us, they email us, they come in, people themselves come in. They know that they're gonna need help or their neighbor needs help, and so we do a lot behind the scenes. I'll just tell you a quick anecdote. Just one couple in their mid-90s, they were gonna be alone on Thanksgiving, and I got a call from a resident in town who's connected to a program in Danvers that provides hot Thanksgiving meals delivered to the home on the holiday. So we made arrangements for them to receive them, but on top of that, one of our police detectives that was on duty said, well, why don't you get me a dinner and I'll sit with them. Well, it turned out to be one of the spouses' last Thanksgivings. because I was just at his graveside funeral a couple weeks ago. So these are the things that we do every day that no one ever knows about. So I do want to emphasize that half of what we do is in here, the other half is happening behind the scenes. And I always say that the most important thing we do is deliver Meals on Wheels. And that happens just about every day. If there's inclement weather and it's anticipated, a lot of times a frozen meal goes out ahead of time. We just had a stash brought in today because of the holiday coming up. So, 5 days a week, and I know it's not perfect because there are actually 7 days in a week, but 5 days a week, people are getting a hot meal delivered, a nutritious meal that meets their dietary restrictions, if they're gluten-free, if they need it pureed, all of that happens. And more importantly, they're getting a visit, because a lot of the people are living alone. And so we're extending the time that people can stay in their homes, and the drivers report back to us if they see a change, because so many of our drivers have been doing it for years. So they actually can monitor the clients and see if there's a change. And, that's pretty amazing when you think about it, the type of care they're getting. So I assure you that the 2,000 plus seniors in Topsfield are very well looked after. Just to give you a number, I promised you some. Last year, we delivered over 6,000 Meals on Wheels through most kinds of weather. I do want to mention, because we're in this room, the last time I was here was during the power outage, when we worked with the emergency team and opened the first ever comfort station in Topsfield.
Oh, back in
So
October.
when we had that extended power outage, and several of our senior communities went into a couple days, and that Tuesday, you might remember, the temperature was dropping pretty low. So there was great concern. So we had a meeting at 3, and at 5 o'clock, we opened up here. And we had we had a 14-year-old charging her phone. We had, we had some volunteers running around Great Hill letting people know. So we had the bus bring, half a dozen residents of Great Hill. They were still out of power. So it was good, because it was also like a test run. If we, in a worse situation, if we needed to do it, we feel confident that we could do it. So I do want to mention that. I think we're being very responsive, and again, that was a 2-hour turnaround, and I give a lot of credit to our fire chief, who kind of led that charge. But we also, during the power outage, delivered like kind of care packages that included like a tap light and like a banana and a granola bar and Ensure, and just things that we thought would help people get through that, couple days. There were some people in town that didn't have electricity for 4 days. No fault of the towns, it was just the situation. But we tried to react to that. So that happens too. And again, people never really know much about it. Although I do try to post a lot on Facebook. I know that Facebook's in trouble today because of all the fake news and all of that. But I can promise you that if you go to the Friends of the Topsfield Council on Aging Facebook page, it's all real news. And I really want to try to give people a place to go, certainly residents that are curious. People themselves like to go on and look at their pictures, but for families that are out of town and want to know, what are mom and dad up to? I think it really reassures people. We hear that all the time. So I really make an effort to try to keep that up to date, and also to promote things. I just today copied and pasted a message from Senior Care. It was about, I guess there's people out there saying that they're raising money for senior care, which sounds very legitimate. That's our area agency. Who would, it's different if they say, UNICEF or something. But I copied and pasted and put that right out there. And then a lot of times, I kind of let other people do it. Sometimes I do it myself, but other people pick up on it and share it on the residents page too. So anyway, that's a really good way to stay on top of what's going on. But I just want to say, as far as grants, you brought it up. We have our regular grants, the formula grant, Board of Selectmen just put that one through. And the Title III grant with senior care. We are just starting an initiative. We got a grant from the Tufts Foundation. It's more about training, is what I'm learning, because Lisa Teichner of the Tri-Town Council is actually the lead person on this, but it's to promote intergenerational programs and activities. It's called Bridges Together. I'll pass this around. There's a couple of big pushes out there, age-friendly, dementia-friendly, and intergenerational. Those are kind of three big areas that are connected to senior citizens that are out there right now, and we're trying to be ahead of the curve on all of them. So a lot of people don't even know about this. This is kind of breaking news, actually. We have a training on March 21st. It's with a lot of stakeholders in town. It's names you know. Bernie Creedon is part of this with the Rotary. No, Lisa, she rounded them up. Zilly, who many people know, she's running the Earth Day in April, and we might tie into that. And several other people. So let me just pass that around, just so you can get a feel for what that is. So again, that's a grant that isn't gonna bring money. It's more about training so that we can move on. Now, I can tell you, I've got half a dozen intergenerational initiatives that we had this past year. So we're ahead of it already, but this will be good because it'll bring other groups into it. I'd love to do something with the Rotary. This is kind of our first chance to do that. So I'm excited about the collaborations that we have, and we're building all the time. We have a strong one with the Historical Society. In fact, Norm and I just met today, and we're putting the finishing touches on a insider's tour of the Coast Guard Academy. So we're excited to follow up last year's trip to West Point with that. I just spoke with a woman who came for the first time, about new members. I think she was just kind of passing through, but she came and played Scrabble for a while, but she moved from Topsfield to Salem, and she said, you know, I've started my own group in Salem because I went to the Salem Council on Aging and all the people were ill. Like, it just wasn't, I'm trying to do things with people that are active, whatever, and you know, and that's what all this is. All the programming thing. It's very inclusive. We like to say that just about everything we do, anyone could do, and we really try to keep the costs down. Most things we do have no or very minimal cost. We're doing an escape room next month. Wish me luck. You may never see me again, but I got a group on, and so the charge per person is very, very low because it's based on a group rate. So anyway, I'm always looking for those opportunities. I bought 50% off tickets to go to the North Shore Music Theater on Black Friday last year, and they went to Evita, saw a great show. So we try to be very economical and sensitive to people's different situations. There's some people that don't think they will have a good time unless they pay a lot of money. So sometimes we go to the theater. We went to see White Christmas up in New Hampshire. That was great. The Friends are wonderful. They're tremendously supportive, and so if there's someone that would like to go to that show or to the Holiday Pops, we did that as well in Lowell, they will fund a couple scholarships so that people that want to go but wouldn't have the means can attend. So lot of good things happening. I've given you the Meals on Wheels number. I also want to tell you that we had, this is actually a really interesting number, 629 different people ride our bus last year. Different people. Overall, we provided 2,200 rides.
So all residents of Topsfield, 629 residents of Topsfield?
Mostly residents of Topsfield. We have a handful of people from other towns that attend our stuff regularly, but yeah, so I hadn't seen that number till I was preparing the annual report. But 629, 60 plus, and that's a good number. And that's actually FY17, we've had more since then. So I could go on all night, but I know that we've got other business. So very quickly, to address the request for this year, it's really a correction on the postage. Basically, it costs, we do put it online, but the reality is most people want it. And so it gets delivered to over 600 households, the discount rate, and then we make it available like all the senior communities, the Daybreak, Curbs, Lockstop, the places where people tend to congregate. So the real cost is about $2,400 to do that, and I think we budgeted about $2,000. So that's just a correction. And the other correction was for the software, the older software, the maintenance fee was a little lower than the new software. It's about $700.
Do you deliver this by email?
We are working on that.
So, like with your statements from banks, have people opt out and
Right,
take it electronically instead of by mail.
right, yes, no, we're definitely working on
Easier said
that.
than done, I'm sure,
Yeah.
for an organization of your size, but.
Yeah, but it is available online, pretty much when we get it, when we send it out,
Yeah.
it's available online at that point. Because there is the consideration of people signing up for things.
What does it
So we
cost to
wanna
mail
be-
one of these?
We wanna be fair. We pay about 200, so it's about 30 cents, right? Because it gets mailed to about 600, and we
And
pay
200 are the number of, no, are members,
So we don't have members.
but somehow you
Technically-
distinguish who gets it and who doesn't,
Right, so, people ask for it.
right?
You know, I feel like, and this is something I look forward to doing, probably once we get settled into our new space. I think it'd be good to send out a postcard at some point saying, do you want to receive? And we've done this, I will tell you, every time we get people together, we had over 100 people at our holiday dinner. Every time we get that many people together, we are gonna take the chance to inform them of something, or ask them a question, or fill out a form that we need. So this year, we did have Tula, our assessor, come and talk about tax relief in town. And actually, something that she doesn't have to talk about, which is the circuit breaker. That is actually a state program, and we try to let people know about it as much as possible. And we have the AARP tax people that come in and they talk about it. So we've worked really hard to try to get that word out there about the different things that are available. I do want to say one more thing, because I can't leave this out. I mentioned dementia friendly is kind of the new wave, and we are ahead of the curve. Number one, because we have an expert in town who's been running a Rest Stop Ranch, which is kind of like a retreat center for people that are kind of battling memory challenges. And she came to us with a request to open up a memory cafe. In the initial budget that she presented, which was very standard, was about $2,500 to operate. We have done 5 weeks over spread, so once a month for 5 sessions. It's been tremendously successful. This is a book that talks about it. I said we're never gonna be able to do it for $2,500, so what can we do? So she took the hometown discount and got her funding through the cultural council. So she is getting paid way below market to be the creative director. She also donates her equipment that she has. She has like hearing, there's a good name for it, like hearing devices, so that people come in with hearing loss, they have a better shot of hearing because she has a microphone, but also all the supplies. I think she spends honestly most of the money on the supplies for it. But the cultural council supported that, and the Friends purchased the refreshments, and the people who staff it, you know, I go in on Saturdays and do it, we have volunteers that come in. So basically, there's no charge to the town. And this has been a tremendously successful program. It's part of our dementia-friendly initiative. Lynn Bermudez and Betty Cullinan have just done a tremendous job launching this in town. We are part of a global movement, and we are way ahead of the curve in terms of other communities. We have a few dementia friends in this room that came to our sessions. We have a couple of champions here. And the champions can go out and train. Training isn't the right word, but just kind of educating other people. So there are 3 prongs: memory cafe, these dementia friends sessions, and we have a Girl Scout working with us who's offering an 8-week free dance class, because research shows that actually dance does more than anything else to reduce dementia. Which is interesting, about 76%, like it's pretty significant. So we're hoping that Maggie will stay on with us once she completes her Gold Award. She's got a couple more years at Masco, so to the intergenerational piece, keep the high school students involved. And I think, yeah, the potential is pretty infinite, I think. And people are really helping out, so it's
It's
good.
a terrific overview. Any questions from anybody?
Thank you very much.
We always love having you come in because you're so enthusiastic and excited about what you do, and it just makes us all feel good to hear that, and to hear that the funding is working well, and the population that we're serving, which is a major part of the town, we've been able to do some things to get you in a good space for now, and hopefully, when we move into the town hall, it'll be even better. So Paula, thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for what you do.
Right. All right,
See ya.
Good night.
that brings us, sorry Kelly, it's late, but
No, I don't.
town administrator. Do you wanna talk capital first, or the operating budget?
Perhaps the operating budget first. We had a meeting last week with the board where I walked through the list of requests that were over the guidelines. So I know we've already talked about a couple of them tonight. I just wanted to give you some feedback at this early point of the process. In general, there was an inclination to support, I guess is the best way to put it, all of the items on the list except for the ones that need further discussion among the board would represent, two of the big ticket items would be the selectmen's special legal services. There was a request for $10,000 additional for the legal services budget line. And then the town clerk additional part-time personnel for the I think that's about $17,000. They wanted some more time to just review that and talk about it, deliberate about that a little bit further. And then the only other thing that was sort of outstanding was, and it's not a big ticket item, but it represents the fire department piece. There just seems to be a need for some further deliberation on those particular items. But all in all, what I did is I walked through the list with the board.
I'm sorry, Kelly,
Sure.
the fire department piece was which one? Was that the gear?
There were two, no, we're not talking about capital right now, we're just talking about the operating. So the request over guideline and
Additional
other,
medical supplies.
$2,500 for med supplies.
Yep.
And then there was $2,000 for travel expense and meetings. So, well, I'll start with that if you don't mind. What I did is I took those items and what I did was do a summary of a town administrator recommendation on each of those items. I identified, and we can use the fire department pieces as a starting point. I identified like the medical expenses as essential, meaning that I consider that to be a medical necessity, not only for risk management of our personnel and our patients, but also a safety issue for the patients and fire department staff. I also felt that the revenue offset from our ambulance receipts, it would be a direct offset to this cost. So even though the fire chief needed to request this additional funding for those supplies, the reality is that when those supplies are used and we are receiving insurance reimbursement, that is effectively paying for these additional supplies. So I felt that my recommendation would be that this would be an essential request that should be funded, in my opinion. And that the other item was the travel expense for $2,000. I suggested that this was legally mandatory because this represents a contractual obligation with relation to our employment agreement with the fire chief. That was negotiated as part of our salary. It's something that wasn't in last year's budget for the former fire chief, but I characterize this as a legally mandatory expense that should be funded, and if not, we have to find some other place to fund it. So that was my recommendation to the board. They decided to sort of hold that out for further deliberation. But I wanted to give you a sense of sort of where they fell with that particular item. Has I think the fire chief already came at the last meeting. Okay, so she might have done more justice to those items than I just did. But I just wanted to update you with the information that I provided to the board. So I can start at the beginning of the list, if you don't mind. I'll start with the $10,000 that's being requested for Selectmen's Special. That $10,000 represents more than 0% funding over last year's budgeted amount. If you recall, last year for the FY17 budget, I did have to go and ask for a reserve fund transfer, particularly in relation to a number of cases that were outstanding, also a lot of issues that were brought up during the special and the annual town meeting Some examples were the Donnie Bristol Farm acquisition and the amount of legal work that was required in order to present that item in the proper way on the warrant. I think we're talking about maybe $3,500 of last year's budget might have been used to directly pay for the legal expense related to that. We also had another expense with the, if you recall, the hydrant regency, the animal shelter, or the the doggy daycare. We have some outstanding charges that were not, the court ruled in our favor, however, we did not receive any payment for that. We were hoping that we could use that payment to help offset those legal expenses that were incurred because of that particular case. In fact, we still haven't received our any payment whatsoever, so we'll be going to town council and they will be filing whatever needs to be filed with the court so that we can hope to recuperate some of that expense for that. There are a number of other cases that were outstanding with the Conservation Commission. There were a number of public records requests or information leading up to the new regulations and the release of the new regulations. So there are a number of items that were on that list that required us that we went forward and asked for a reserve fund transfer. So with that, so now we're in the new fiscal year, and I did a projection based on our actual expenses for half the year, projected that out to the end of the year, and I'm projecting that we're gonna go over budget again. In particular, one significant expense is the expenses related to public records requests. I have a total of about $5,000 in this fiscal year so far that's been spent specifically on public records requests. So again, if we project to the end of the year, we'll be going over budget again rather than ask for a reserve fund transfer. I wanted to identify the potential that the FY18 special town meeting transfers may involve a transfer of funds to cover any expense between now and the end of the fiscal year. But I thought that it would be responsible of me to request the additional funding in the budget for FY19 in anticipation that our current level of legal expenses may continue to be at this level. So that was really the basis for which I've requested the additional $10,000 for that line. The town accountant is here to maybe give a little bit more detail. The second item on the list that I presented to the board was in reference to our fees for our annual audit. The bylaw requires that we do an annual independent audit. Due to a number of, we've had a long-standing relationship with our current auditor. We took a break for about 2 years with another auditor. Dick Hingston is our current auditor. He's been with the town for many years. We were able to utilize his expertise to help us to formulate and work with the Collins Center on financial policies, but also, most recently, who is also a valuable asset to us in getting our bond rating and having our interview with S&P to allow us to get such, the upgrade with our bond rating. Because of a number of the different projects that we've been working on and the level of, the borrowing and some of our questions about the implementation of generic policy statements, what that means to the town, how that impacts your decision-making on the FinCom level. Their rate has been suggested to be increased for next year. So we are simply taking their proposal and requesting that additional funding go into support that line. I don't know if Catherine, if you have any other.
Well, just that, we've had a 3-year contract with them, and their rates they would be considered lower than what other similar towns are paying. And at the same time, because we were locked into that contract with all the GASB requirements are requiring a lot more. They're also connected now with the OPEB and the actuarials, the retirement actuary. They're putting in a lot more work, so the prices of the financial statements are going up across the state. And then when he comes in at different times, he's always available for questions, and never hesitates. And you can use my name. You can, I'll stand by this for you. Which sometimes, I consider that he goes above and beyond. On occasion, when he's coming in and giving us a day, like one time we had him come in with the trust funds, he did help out with the S&P rating. he will charge extra. Again, it's not based on an hourly rate, he just kind of gives like a day price, and that's why there's always been a little additional in that amount too. It's when it's clearly not related to financial audit or, the leeway he gives us with questions throughout the year as well.